Yes, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to a brand new Social Confoes. I'm back after a week that I was completely down with the flu. I was bedridden for a week.
Yeah, I
So,
gotta say, welcome back. And I was worried last week. I could
yes.
reach you, nothing, and I'm like, whoa, what's gonna
So,
happen?
my
But
apologies to you, my apologies for everybody in the Social Confoes family, but that day was the first day, the first full day that I was bedridden. There's a
no, but
really, really weird flu going around here. It's very insane, but luckily, I pulled through after a week of being like completely attached to my bed.
no, I'm
Uh,
really happy you're back to your
yeah,
old self. Like I've been feeling the past week, kind of, um, like nausea, dizziness. My body was overheating a bit, but nothing that uh, made me impossible to not move
but
but
it was weird because my wife had it the week prior, and there are people who've experienced this in December and were bedridden for a week. And I posted yesterday that I finally, after a week, I'm back. And people were like, "Yeah, I've had this flu for 3 weeks," and I was like, "Whoa!" So it's
yeah,
it's
just
very
showed up
weird.
on the
It's close to a lot of similarities to dengue or being mentioned, but I didn't have the fever that comes along with dengue usually. And for me, it at day five was the worst day. I'm somebody who was very positive, and for the first time in my life, I was just staring at the ceiling. I was like, "Oh, this is what people go through when they say like, I don't feel doing anything in life." And it was such a weird feeling because I'm usually an upbeat, positive person that
yeah.
always can find something to do in life. So for me, it's really weird not being able to do this show. So without further ado, I'm happy. I'm excited to
Yeah,
get back
and
into it.
we have a fun topic today, and having this sickness go around, it's all about learning about it. Usually the information pops up later, and to bring this into the context of what we're going to talk about today we're going to talk about education and sustainability, a combination that I think it's very much underrated, especially you have the schooling system, but the education, the learning and unlearning process, and especially combined with sustainability. And we have joined with us today. I'm going to bring her up now, and Daniela Hernandez from Earth and Life University. We're going to talk. I have a question about that university, but before we do that, Daniela is also a YLI alumni from 2018. So I posted the booking schedule in one of the networking groups, and she just booked a slot with us, and that was really cool. So I was expecting, usually it's the cohort you're in that usually responds, but to see someone from like 5 years ago um, signing up, it just goes to show once you're in a network, it's kind of it perpetuates through time. So even in it's 5-10 years, if you see that association with someone who's been through a similar program or something, there is already a connection to a certain degree. So without further ado, Daniela, welcome to Social Confoes. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's my pleasure also to be with you. And I was very interested when you posted that on the Wildlife portal. Like you said, I think it's a great network. We share, like, even though we do not each other, I think we share similar values related to what does it mean to be an entrepreneur. And I thought, like, what I don't usually have English interviews, so it was also like curiosity for me to do this experiment. So I'm sorry if my English
Okay, no,
it's
it's
not very
interesting
clear.
because it's not the first experiment because the actual program Wildlife. So tell us a little bit about Daniela and also how you decided to end up doing Wildlife back in 2018.
Yeah, well, when I was in 2018, I was so much younger with some ideas, and actually, I had another project different from the one I'm currently leading. I was a beekeeper, and my project was related with producing raw honey with stingless native bees from the Mayan region, that is the zone in Mexico where I live in. We worked with Mayan beekeepers to revalue Mayan culture through the production of one of the best honey in the world, that is from Peninsula de Yucatan. And that's how I got involved in the wildlife program. I I feel like I didn't take advantage from all the experience in that moment. I was very young, and also I was with a lot of commitments in my growing in my entrepreneurship journey. So it was a challenge for me to have this balance, to be out of my country in a project that is super physical for me, that it was being with the bees. But at the end, I think I'm still working with wildliers from my cohort, and we're still creating things. And for me, that's the most valuable thing about wildlife.
Yeah,
So
the
what I
bonds
do
you
want to
make.
know
Yeah,
is, um, are you still active in the field of bees
the
and honey?
bees. Yeah,
I still have my bees, but I'm not dedicated as I were before. I'm We still have around 60 hives from Apis mellifera and around 30 hives of Meliponas. But I'm not doing like the thing that I did before, that it was B2B commercialization, selling to hotels, boutiques in the region, because now, like most of my time, it's growing Earth and Life University.
all right. So one last thing about the bees. What's so special about the honey from the Yucatan region that you gotta say it's like the best honey in the world?
Yeah, well, it has two differences. First, the honey produced by Apis mellifera, like the bees we normally know that stings. Um, that honey, um, like we have a lot of flora, we have a lot of plants biodiversity, and in 1 acre of trees, you can have even like 200 different type of trees. So
Oh, so the density of the flora is
it's a
like,
multi-flower, yeah. For example, some people prefer like honey from one plant, but that one plant actually is a monocultive,
yeah.
yeah. And that's actually against biodiversity. So having a lot of biodiversity in the trees, and also the trees in this in a lot of countries from America, but in Mexico and especially in Peninsula Yucatan, is medicinal trees. So the honey, it has like more a better smell and a better flavor, and it's more medicinal. And the second difference is with the bees. The other type of honey, that is melipona honey, is made from stingless bees. The stingless bees are bees that do not sting. They are native. They were here before the conquer of
Yeah.
European Spanish, and they are adapted to the region, to the trees. Like the bees that sting flies until 5 kilometers, but like very low, and the Meliponas flies around 1 kilometer, but up. And the trees from the region are more taller than
Yeah.
the flora in the medium range.
That's
I gotta
pretty
say, you can
interesting.
definitely
Yeah.
say we're talking to a professional expert
I love,
beekeeper.
I love bees. Like my whole life changed when I started beekeeping. And for me, I don't know, I would like to have more time to be in nature. And part of being in nature was a lot of expertise for me and was like a life changing. And I think that's part of the seed that I put in Earth and Life University.
So yeah, because basically it's you're still involved with nature and biodiversity in a certain sense. So what was the transition from being a beekeeper to Earth and Life University, and what makes Earth and Life University kind of different from a traditional university as you know it?
Yeah, well, my co-founder and I have backgrounds with nature. I have background with bees and insects, ants, for example, and my co-founder has experience with algae, sargassum, spirulina, chlorella. So there's a lot of um, knowledge in nature. I always said that. Do you know how many years Earth has been alive?
So like, when do we start counting alive?
Like
like
since the Earth has
since,
started, since the
uh,
since the beginning of Earth.
a few billion years, I would say, based on memory of certain documentaries, but I won't be able to say exact, but a few
Eh,
billion years.
yeah, like between 3.7 and 4.5 billion years. And do you know how many years has humanity have lived?
Yeah, that's really short. I think it's like a few 100,000, not
Yeah,
even, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
depends on the history you want to tell, but
Yeah.
between 100,000 years, if you want to like be optimistic, 300, 500,000 years, right? So Earth and species that has a lot of more living time that us as human in the Earth has a lot of interesting mechanisms of survival, because I mean, we're the only planet in this galaxy, at least that has proven life. And like, I don't know, for me it's a miracle to see like all the possibilities and all the perfect all the perfect moments that has to align to produce life. And because of that kind of learnings and experiences, my co-founder and I said, okay, we need to we and also we had experience in education. I have been teaching like Spanish and um, literature classes, and my co-founder has teach economics history since a lot of time. And we see a lot of deficiencies in education system. There's My co-founder call it like we live in a McDonald's education system, when universities give you a happy box with happy books and happy topics, and then you have your happy degree to go to the market and do what everyone wants, tells you what to do, right? And right now we are facing some incredible challenges that are not easy to solve with a happy box. And that's why we said, okay, we need to transform educational system, and we have a teacher that is Earth and it's nature. And if we are open to learn, open to unlearn what we have taught, maybe we can give solutions that right now seems like there is no solution, like climate change, the loss of biodiversity, contamination, and these problems are attempting to our own existence as humanity. And we are not aware of it. And I don't know, I think mm, in maybe less than 10 years, we will really have to fight for living resources like water, like energy, and that's how started everything.
So let's take something like a practical example. Of course, you can give us an example, but let's say single-use plastic, for instance. Like that's something that it's like in the happy package, like you describe. It's like, hey, plastic is really easy. It's easy for packaging. It's easy for this. It's easy for that. But then, from a biodiversity perspective, it's like, especially single-use plastic, it's like one of the biggest waste there is on the planet. So, what would from a more I don't want to say traditional, but from a more earth environmental friendly scenario, how would you approach that kind of a problem?
Yeah, well, I always said that the favorite word we have in sustainability issues is depends. You know, in sustainability, we always have to make comparisons to really know if it's available or it has viability or not. You know, we tried also not to say is right or wrong, because we live in a moment in our history where everything, or you are in my side or you are against me, right? There's no middle points, there's no questioning, and we try to bring again to be in the middle, to see the different kind of gray tones, colors, and see another possibility. So for example, with the plastic of one use, only one use, well, in that moment, it was a great invention and it was a great innovation. For example, for clothing, there was a lot of exploitation to animals and skin because a lot of products was made from animal skin, right? So plastic actually started to help those animals to improve more materials to make our needs. What happened? We we did it in a massive way, and we are not aware with those from where that plastic comes from and where does it end. So plastic is a problem? No, the problem is how we are managing plastic and where we are going to dispose that plastic and how we are going to recover that material again to put it in our process. And that's what we try to um, uh, teach or provoke in our students to see what solutions they can approach depending on their community. Because, for example, I'm in a city, I have a recycle center when I can take my plastic and go there. But what happens in not urban or rural communities where they don't have that, but they receive a lot of products with plastic from one use, right? What other alternatives they can make? So it really we try to develop this creative thinking and this systemic thinking to interconnect all all the people, not only the problems but also the solutions.
Yeah, so it's very contextualized based on the environment it is in, and in its process. Like the reason I specifically brought up when we were discussing topics, the term unlearning, and you just mentioned it as well, like learning in the happy McDonald way. It's learning is quite, I'd say, it's easier to learn than to unlearn, because once you know something, once you're used to doing something a certain way, it becomes automated. It becomes to some extent even a habit, like the plastic use if you go to a supermarket, for example. And uh, I'd say people underestimate unlearning process, which is sometimes even more vital than learning new things because it's harder to let go. So how would you approach from the way you approach it with your university, the unlearning process? What's that like? How should someone think about that?
Yeah, the learning process, I think, like you said, is the most difficult part because it is not only difficult with our alumni, with our students, but also with our teachers. You know, the people that are going to teach our new community also has to unlearn. And I think unlearn is very related to humility. There's a lot of in educational system where degrees matters. I mean, oh no, I'm not master, you call me PhD in whatever I want, right? But the title, they I mean, sometimes people has a PhD and really they don't have not even the basic skills to use a Zoom. It's dramatic, right? Um, and it's how to deal with the learning with the humility to say, hey, we don't know nothing. We are here to learn, um, and starting with this beginner mind to question everything. And for us, I think the most important part is open the door to curiosity. um, we think that as we were born, people kills curiosity from us as children, right? We ask why, and people say just because. We want to taste things, and they hit us to not to touch or lick things, right? So what we want is people feel again the curiosity to, I want to learn more. Like, I'm talking to you and you say some topics that I'm not related. I have Google right now, and I can Google it and I can learn something new. And it's incredible how we have a lot of access to information, and we are not using it to access to knowledge. For me, it's very like shocking when in a class I ask for something and people don't Google it. Like, why you are telling me you don't know if you are in the computer and you can open a new window and you can Google what I'm saying, right? But no, like it's like it didn't occur to him that they can Google it. So the learning process is, remember that we don't know nothing, that we have to be humble, that we need to start as a beginner mind every day. Like every day, wake up and say, I don't know nothing. Let's explore the world, and and like mm, turn on that curiosity feeling.
Okay, I do have a question because in the traditional education system, there are certain validators that are being used. So, especially if you get when you get to the university level, um, and this is also the happy package as well because there's money involved. So one
You
of the
like the
biggest
happy
knocks
bugs.
is, yeah. So one of the things for universities, for instance, especially in Europe, is it it really depends on how many high level articles, scientific articles get written and how many of them get published. And the better the journals they get published in, the more funding the school or that specific department or that specific part of the university earns, which of course, how more profitable that part of the university is, the more say they get in what direction the university goes. It's also made as a validator where PhD students try to do research that's valuable to the professor because then it can be used for publications. And if it's being used for publications, it earns again more money. So this is a real kind of like structural, you can almost call it a pyramid in some kind of ways. And that's also one of the problems with the validation at a certain point because it's no longer about finding things that are valuable to humanity, but it's becoming more like these are the articles that we need to write because these are the topics that are the hot topics in the academics, and the focus goes on that. So that's my knock on the traditional educational model. But then my question, when you turn it around like this, where you say like, hey, we need to unlearn because basically the structure is failing us, how do you validate the learnings? Because say there's somebody who says something about bees in Mexico, you can easily validate that because you own the bees, you actually have worked with bees, and you know firsthand from practical experience that if somebody tells you something that's not true, that you can easily validate or unvalidate it. But with newer stuff and things that are completely new and haven't been properly researched from a traditional scientific perspective, how is the validation process for those kind of learnings?
Well, we're working on it. I have to be honest. I don't think we have the answers yet. We are trying. Like you said, the part of publishing, it's how universities measure their success. But the publishing system also is broken because it takes a lot of time to publish. Then your research is not more new or innovative because it took too long that people signed so they can be published. So there are like, it's a system. Like we said, those are ecosystem problems. And we, for example, we don't have grades. We don't put an A, B, C or 10, 9, 8 to our students. We only have two grades, or like two, yeah, like to final grades, like we recommend you or we do not recommend you. Like like you come to the classes, you participate, you collaborate with your fellows, you show that you are a professional, responsible, with communication skills, that you are using the concepts we are giving you in the class, that you can demonstrate me what you are doing with your project and your documentation, your photos, or whatever the teacher asks to them. Uh, we recommend you to go and advance with other classes. And if you didn't come to class, if you didn't participate, if you didn't show your evolution, as we call them, agents of change or change makers, if you don't prove to us that you're a change maker, then we cannot recommend you, and we see you in the next class, to try again, right? um, and it has been difficult because we're still, we have a lot of resistance from even the students, because if something is not obligatory, they do not feel they have to do it. And it's terrible, like, like, this educational system made us do the things just because someone tells us, and punish us. And we believe in the education, in a more freedom way, like, I enter a class because I want to learn, and I feel happy to learn, and I want to do it, and I want to participate. But not everyone feels that way, and we're still working on it, on how we can create this model where our students feel challenged, uh, not by obligation, but maybe a more pushy way, or I don't know, more constrained ways to feel them more. I'm going to do this stuff in my class, and that's how we validate. We have like um, a feedback sheet where we provide them feedback in different areas from their project, their final project, their participation during the course, and in a more personal way, like their leadership and communication skills, what they did good, what they could improve, and that's kind of how we validate that growth. I don't know
So
what you think.
yeah, no, because I can see where you come from getting that resistance, because the root cause actually goes deeper to the traditional, like from a young age. As you said, we've been conditioned in a way that eliminates curiosity. It eliminates critical thinking, and uh, talking back, asking questions. And when you're at a later stage in life, when you gain more knowledge, you're kind of constrained in that bracket. So my question becomes like, you're approaching it, or you're introducing this type of learning at a already higher academic level, whereas the people coming in kind of need to unlearn a lot before they can fully appreciate this model that you're trying to introduce. So it's a constant like tension between those two, right? And you also mentioned a lot, there's communication skills, the leadership skills, the soft skills that encompass that. Like, how much weight do you guys put into that, especially when you get students from the traditional academic sense, who are, as you said, the PhD. They are academically very intelligent but can't even operate Zoom. Like, how much weight do you put on those soft skills, and how do you ensure that they kind of adapt to learn these soft skills?
Yeah, well, like you said, when we decided to have these issues, I realized that we should have start with kids. You know, like what did we do at university? We have to start with kids to introduce our new ideas and our new models. But we're now in the middle of the journey, and that dream is going to it's in the plan of maybe 10 to 20 years, right? um, but we put a lot of emphasis on leadership. um, the the profile of a sustainability leader, it's a very complex profile, because and it's I don't know if in Suriname you have this job opportunities, but here in Mexico, um, all the big companies, the corporative has this new role that is the sustainability role, and there are no people that can fit in that role because they need to have technical skills related maybe with engineering, with economics. um, some companies put together sustainability and public relationships or marketing, like, dude, no, that there are two different roles and positions, right? But those are like the activities they put on. It has to do it is related with measure carbon footprint, ESG indicators, like really technical stuff. But then, as a leadership role, you have to be in communication with all the departments. You have to talk a lot about what are the sustainability projects the company is carry on, and you need to work with in teams. So all the teams in marketing, in new products, in selling, they are talking about sustainability, and it really needs a lot of soft skills, right? I don't like to say soft skills. I prefer to say human skills. um, and we what we do is three different activities each month. One is a workshop with our coach and psychologist to develop these skills, leadership, communication, once a month. Then we have another activity that we call Changemaker Circle, when we bring a leader in sustainability to talk about their experience, like the day-to-day experience, right? Not the presentation per se of a project or a topic, but say, look, the reality is this, so our fellows can be more in touch of what's going on in the companies, in the real today projects. And then we have our third activity that for me is our, like, my favorite, that is called the Earth Challenge. The Earth Challenge is uh, with this in Harvard, for example, they has these activities when they gather the alumni, and they put up a problem, right? From, like, in 2010, Starbucks wanted to open a new store in Ukraine, but they have this problem. So how do you resolve this problem? And the students present some solutions, and at the end, the teachers, they already have the solution. Well, what Starbucks did was this and this and this, and these were their mistakes, and this was their goals, etc. What we do is a real problem. We invite our organizations and companies we are linked to, and we say, do you want to participate in this Earth Challenge? Please tell us what social, environmental issue you have right now, and bring it to our students, and we are going to work together with you during 2 months to present you these different solutions. And I think this is like this strong activity where shows our students that it's not always related with knowledge. It's really related to work with teams, to communicate, to present, to work in something, and then that the leader of the organization tell us, oh no, I didn't want this, right? It was like, what, I work on this, but that's real life and that's what happens. And we need to know how to deal with this, because that is right now our reality, and if we want to change it, then we need to be flexible and we need to adapt, and we need to be fast in a world that is going really really fast.
So to because I think one of the things that you also said is that you don't want to be stuck with this is the way and this is how it should be. But for instance, when we talk about sustainability, the first thing that comes up in my mind, and also with the bigger organizations, is the Sustainable Development Goals. And basically, that's kind of been brought in. It's almost brought in like a Bible, as in these are the things that we will need to work on as a as the world. How do you incorporate those existing sustainable development goals that have been published throughout the whole world? How do you bring it in, and from what approach do you kind of get your students to work with them or to see them from different perspectives as well?
Yeah, we need to work with them because that's what exists and that's what actually people love. I hate it. Like, I need to be honest, I hate that model of the sustainable development goals because
I
um,
agree with you.
yes, high five. Like, I don't know how they can talk about it in every meeting, and it's like we are not getting, we are not getting. Actually, I'm doing a post for my LinkedIn where I make a difference between what we think is sustainable development, that is this economic, social, environmental, and at the center. And no, like a strong sustainability is in the big sphere is ecology, in the middle is sociology, and in the at the end and the smallest part is economy. So when we don't understand what um, we need to understand from where does come from all our problems, and the economic system is still primary in decisions and in sustainable development goals, and the United Nations, like we are still operating in the economic line, and 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 it's okay because the capital doesn't want to sacrifice itself to and disappear. And I'm not saying we need to disappear capital, just remember that the economy only exists where a society can relationship in a healthy way, and a society only can live in an environment where we are in balance, right? So let's please remember what are the priorities. And but actually I have this fight with even my teachers, like my teachers sometimes and I had a lot of discussions, because this also is related with a colonizing mind, like these models come from United States or Europe, like, oh, Europe is the best. Like, no. Like, for example, in sustainability, as Mexico or as Latin Americans, we have a lot more culture to put in the world, but we have this culture mindset that we are less than, that we need to learn from other big countries, like these biggest countries, like for example Noruega, Norway or
Oh, Norway.
Sweden.
Yeah, Norway.
Yeah, like, dude, they have built their empire through the extraction of petrol, of oil, and they have not been sustainable for a lot of years, and we need to question that. And Latin America has been the waste garden from a lot of countries, and we are not being aware of that. And I don't know, I think that really only happens when you open the debate and the discussion with the community itself, right? And it's like it's been in the class, and it's, have this. I think there are a few students that we are in the room, that we are like bringing those topics, and we are like making the discussion happen, right? And it's uncomfortable. Like people, at least in Mexico, I don't know how is there, but people don't like discuss. Like they think you are fighting, and no, it's not personal. It's just let's let's question things.
Yeah, think about it critically. Like here as well, like if you look at the the bigger corporation, the big companies, everything they're trying to do now, they're trying to align and package it with the SDGs as they are presented by, you know, the the UN. And then the question is, like, how is that shaped again? And the reason I said I agree with you, because if you look at the history of how the SDGs have been formed and kind of been renamed over decades. Like in the 60s, there were already models like this, like every 10 years. Because before the SDGs, it was the Millennium Development Goals from 2000 to 2015. And before that, there were a few more. So as like, superpowers change, the label has changed over the years, but it has been packaged to kind of, yeah, maybe to tell a certain narrative to a certain degree, but it lets companies especially kind of adopt something that, yes, it's the intent might be good, but there's a perception that you create uh, to towards the average person who doesn't know any
It's that's
better.
why I call it a Bible, in a
Yeah,
similar sense to how Bible is kind of a life book on how to live your life through a way that it's socially
socially
constructive
acceptable,
and
like
socially acceptable. And from that sense, and I think I find it very interesting, because if we look at it in economic, like you just mentioned, the economic is a small part, and the ecological is the environment is much bigger. But sorry, a lot of discussions are still surrounding the structures of power, and the structures of power are structures around the world economy. And then you have like the economies that matter, and then you have this pretty much the center periphery theory, where the center is the economic center, and the economic center of the world decides how we live through the world, and then the rest is the periphery, which brings to an interesting dynamic. And why I'm really interested, Danielle, in your take as well, like how does that shift come about, that people, because now especially the generation that's coming up, that's called the Gen Z generation, the generation that's now going into the work field, is pretty much money centric, as in kind of as in a rebellism towards the generations before them, where they're just like, okay, just give me the money myself, I'll decide for myself what's best for me and for the world. And through that, we see a lot of conflict arise, where people are focused towards the financial benefit and the financial gain, and are just saying like, hey, if nobody else in the world is focusing on the real sustainability, the nature part, then why should I sacrifice my own personal finances and wealth for the rest of the world if the rest of the world isn't doing it? So, do you feel like there is slowly a tipping point coming, where people are starting to get aware, like, hey, wait, this is going too far? Or are we still very far away from that tipping point being reached?
I don't know. Well, first, with just a comment to Diego, I think like I also correlated the SD, the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDG, with, for example, circular economy. Like also, it's very mainstream, and every company wants to do circular economy, but there are like different schools that has developed a more interesting theoretical frameworks to talk about this industrial symbiosis, to not produce waste, etc. I just like I agree with that part of what is mainstream and what companies should do, but I don't want also to fight with companies. I want to help them and say, look, I'm critical with you, but I'm also open to tell you what is it, what path we can take, right? And I think at the end that's what is valuable. We can be critics and just cross my arms and do nothing, or be open and willing to help. And with what you said or asked, Jean-Luc, there is something called active hope. I learned it from Joanna Macy. I really like that term.
Active
um,
hope, is that
yeah,
active
it's a
hope?
book, and actually they have a free course if you want to take it. It for me it was a really like a really great lesson when you are very involved in these topics like climate change, loss of biodiversity, and all these huge problems. You get depressed, like it's, you are seeing a, a, a part of the humanity that is killing itself. But this active hub is that, I realize bad things are going, like how we are depriving ourselves from nature, from our own resources, from survival. But also, I'm open to say, hey, we can do this together, and I'm open to put myself out there, be vulnerable, and say, let's join and let's see to find solutions. Let's try to make this world a little better. And I try to practice this, and I try to share with everyone I talk that let's practice active hope. Like, we not only are hoping everything gets better, we are acting to this world gets better, and without denying what's the reality, being aware of that, but choosing to stay on the path of wellness, of taking care of myself, of because also as change makers, we want to make the happy better, and we sometimes forget about ourselves. We do not eat well, we do not sleep well, and sustainability is also related with our wellness in a more um, holistic way, not only money. And with this new generation, yes, I see a lot of people that is more focused on money. I'm sure you as entrepreneurs are very related with these topics. Like, oh, you're successful. You have to make six figures.
Yeah, usually that's the benchmark of success, like, how much.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that the people also needs new reference, new leaders who shows it really is not about your bank account. It's really what you think is wealthy, richness. For me, being wealthy means have access to nature, to have raw food in my dinner plate. For me, being wealthy means to breathe a clean air, to have a space where I can sleep and be covered, and to have a good quality of clothes. But I just need three type of clothes and nothing more, right? It's to be comfortable. It's to not always wanting more. We are in a world, and that's part of the economic crisis. We always want to grow more, to have more, to earn more. And there are studies where shows where happiness it stops in a point that it doesn't matter how much you are growing more, or how much you are earning more. There's a limit. And I think, and that's another part that we are not still working at in the university, but me as person, I'm developing more is eco psychology. That is this correlation between how we are dealing with ourselves, and the health of our own relationship with ourselves and with the people around us also shows in the health of the earth and our environment. And maybe it's time to work in our emotional and our spiritual sense to rethink how we are related with the earth.
Yeah, when you mentioned like the part where we get so much information now that especially the newer generation, they can the psychological effect on them, that they can even get depressed. I kind of I remember I had a friend like a few years ago when that documentary came out, Seaspiracy, Jean-Luc on Netflix.
Um,
After he watched that, he kind of went into like a mood, like a very low mood, just because he watched that. And that psychological relationship, people underestimate that, I think, how it can, what effect it can have. And could you elaborate a bit more? You mentioned eco psychology. Can you elaborate a bit more on that, and how people should think about it?
Yeah. Well, is this part? Um, the eco psychology is like the study of our minds or emotions, ourselves relates with our ecology. Eco, it comes from Greek oikos, that means home. Ecology, economy, it comes from the same Greek word, that is home. Economy is the managing of the resources of home, and ecology is the study of the relationships with of the home, right? And it's this relation that we have our psyche, our mind, with our home. And
So
it
economy isn't about money if you look at the historical
exactly.
meaning of
I always said that, like, ecology and economy should not be against each other. It's We put it against each other, but it's a human defect, not
Yeah, it
not
took a second for that to sink in when you mentioned it. Like when you said
yeah.
economy means the managing of resources at home. Like
I have another defect, that is I love epistemology. I always like to look from the root of the word, and our language, at least in Spanish, is so rich, and we are not using language. So I'm also uh, a pro language person, and the psychology is, well, this how we are related with our home and with all the living beings that is around us, right? And it's a start. We were taught that humanity is at the peak, in the top, and then the animals, and then the plants, and like if they are here to serve us. And the psychology tell us that we are in the same sphere, and maybe we should think about how we serve our environment, right? Like how I can serve my soil, how I can serve the plants, the insects, the animals, and to see that it's not that I'm serving them, like it's not like, oh, a dog is more important than you as human. It's like we we all are part of the same home, and their wellness is also going to be my wellness. And it's really to remember how that we all came from the same earth, and we are going to the same earth when we pass away, and how our senses were connected to our environment. And with a lot of concrete urban centers, we are disconnected from our sense. And we are animals, we are 2 feet animals. We had intuition, we had this nature inside of us that actually disappears with a lot of technology, and with a lot of urbanization. And maybe it's like to restart, to unlearn, and return to our own nature. That's what explores ecopsychology. I'm sorry if this is too high.
Oh, it's really good. It's a really refreshing take as well. And I think also something that you mentioned And this is what Diego and I get confronted with a lot, is especially the Spanish language. And I see through social media how big of an impact the Spanish culture is, because I'm seeing it to simple things like how big certain Spanish artists that I used to listen to in the 90s are on YouTube, for instance, because it resonates with such a big part of the world that speaks Spanish. But before social media, before YouTube, we weren't aware how many people in the world speak Spanish and how many different countries. Of course, there's a difference in dialect and different the way they are spoken, but how many people in the world actually speak Spanish? And you can see it with some artists. For instance, American artists that started out their career singing English and have now moved back to singing in their native language because they realize, like, wait, there are actually more people listening to my music if I sing in Spanish than in English. And that brings again that we look at English very much from either an Oxford English, the UK English, or the American English. But when you get to Spanish, it gets even more complicated because there's so many different dialects. But then again, you start realizing how big, especially within Latin America, how big the Spanish language is and how much knowledge there is in the language, which, if you're not a native speaker, you don't realize these hidden meanings and hidden uh, information which can be found in those words. So I think that was really interesting as well.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Jean-Luc and I aren't fluent in Spanish at all, but it is, I do
No,
believe
no
it
habla
is.
inglés. Español, no habla español.
It is, if you were to pick up a second language, Spanish should be at the priority. I
Yeah,
think if you want to communicate with a broader
yeah.
spectrum of cultures and people, and pick that. But with that being said, Daniela, it's almost time to wrap up. So to close this off, um, can you tell us what you're busy now with Earth and Life University and where people can learn more about you and what you're doing?
Oh, I think the topic was very interesting. Like from Spanish, I also have a lot to say, right? Like just one more comment. Um, a lot, like I think Spanish is the second native language more spoken in the world. But as Spanish speakers, people tell us that we need to speak English so we can be recognized and to make business, and that English is the language of the business and everything else. The magazines that publish scientific information, they ask to do it in English, right? So also it's like question, why can we publish in Spanish? Like why can we not create more knowledge in Spanish? Why can we oblige people from the United States or the UK to speak Spanish, right? But just a thought. So my you can find me on LinkedIn, Daniela Hernandez Alvarez. I publish in Spanish, sorry, but
Oh,
now you can
Yeah,
but they
yeah,
have a
no need to be
translate.
sorry.
They have
you
translate. Don't
you,
worry.
you can translate it on
Yeah.
Google. It's very easy. And that I publish a little bit more. I have an Instagram account, but I'm not very active. That is called Influencer. Like making this resonance, like the Earth should be our influence, trying to criticize at least like the influencer culture. And as organization Earth and Life University, you can find us at earthuniversity.edu.mx. Thank you. And our social media is Earth Life University. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We have a lot of classes in Spanish in our YouTube channel. So you are welcome to learn with us in our YouTube channel.
Awesome. We'll try to put all those links you shared with us in the description when this episode gets released as well. So do check those out. Jean-Luc, any final thoughts?
Well, Diego, as always, it's been a pleasure. Daniela, thank you for being our guest. for everybody that tuned in live, and for those that are listening to this on their on the streaming platforms. Thank you for tuning in. This was Social Confoes, and see you back next time. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Bye bye.